ResearchOps is a puzzle, but which kind? So actually, instead of doing a full talk, I figured it out, and so this is going to be like super, super short. I'm going to tell you the answer, and then we will move on. This is the puzzle of ResearchOps. Yes. So as I went, I asked my AI friends, and I was like, "What's the answer?" And they're like, "It's this." So you just like shape sort. The horsey goes in the horsey pile. Like you put the researchers in the barn, and then you're like ready to harvest your sweet, sweet insights, and you're off to the races. And whether it's like, okay, even like I trap myself in this. Like, okay, like if I figure out like the knowledge management piece, and I figure out like the tool pieces, and like, yeah, it might have to change, but like, can I just like slot things in and like take a break for a minute? Like, this is also hard. I mean, obviously, unfortunately, I'm not being serious, even though I don't like to be serious. I think really like the problems that we're dealing with are puzzles in a lot of ways, but they're much more complicated puzzles. I was thinking about like what are the actual puzzles that we're dealing with in the research world, in the ResearchOps world, and I've heard a lot of them today. These are just some ones that kind of came to me immediately, like how can I prove my value? It's funny, I wrote these a week ago, so it's funny that you all said them, or like how can I democratize without diluting or still have quality? And these are really meaty puzzles that it's really hard to just kind of solve and answer like, oh, what kind of puzzle it is it? But I didn't want to give up on my really fun goal. So I was like, okay, let's figure out what kind of puzzle it is, even if it's a messy puzzle. Like there's lots of different types of puzzles that are messy, right? Like, so let's just go back. And instead of making a 5-minute talk, I'm going to have a 2,000-year talk. We're going to go back 2,000 years, and we're going to go through the history of a bunch of different types of puzzles. And maybe we'll learn something about puzzles. Maybe we'll learn something about kind of how puzzle thinking and strategy works and how we might apply that to research ops and research. Maybe we will have fun. Maybe I will cry. Maybe I will laugh. We shall see. But at the very least, hopefully it will be inspiring and you'll think about how to apply that to your world, whatever your world is. So 2,000 years ago, it's funny that when I was figuring out, like, okay, what were the first puzzles? It turns out the first puzzles were actually riddles, which is very apt for the human side of ResearchOps today, because I feel like storytelling and kind of the human nature of the riddles and the puzzles is so nice, because it's like we have such a rich history of like oral traditions as people and how we tell stories and the meaning that we layer into it and the lessons that we teach each other and ourselves through stories. I'm sure whether it's a research report or how you communicate with people, that resonates with you. But the actual riddle of the Sphinx is really cool. I will tell you and see if anybody knows the answer. If you already know the answer, don't shout it out. But if you can figure it out. So the riddle of the Sphinx goes, what has one voice, walks on 4 legs in the morning, 2 legs in the afternoon, and 3 legs at night? So I'll just take a little pause. Just think about it. Any bad answers or ideas? It's a trick question, as all riddles are. The answer is humans, which is funny because we're talking about humans. And yeah, the metaphor is that in the morning is early childhood, you're crawling on 4 legs. In afternoon is adulthood, you have 2. I hear you saying it. The cane is adulthood in the evening, and the one voice is just like, humans speak with one voice. It's a little bit like, you tricked me. Everybody has their own puzzle favorites. Riddles are not necessarily my thing, but I think it's really cool, the human aspect of that, for sure. Still about 2,000 years ago, we're never going to go to current day. Like I was a history major for a minute. This is ancient Greece. This is actually Archimedes. He had what is sometimes called ostomachion, or Archimedes' box. This is a classic dissection puzzle. And so what you're supposed to do is you take these pieces, you split them apart, and you're supposed to put them back together into the square. There's 14 pieces, And apparently there's like 536 different variations of how you can put those just same pieces back together into that same square. And so I even just like think about like our research ecosystems and how you split them apart and put them back together in a million different ways. But I also think about like dissection in terms of like analysis and how do you put together meaning, and like there's so many interesting metaphors for how we kind of solve things in the research world with dissection puzzles. And like the cool thing here is like this was lost to history for so long. It was actually on a scroll, and it was found like many years later through technology that was able to just kind of see beyond what was written over it. So it could have been lost. And this actually sparked a really interesting craze. You might be more familiar with the tangram type puzzle. Tangram is interesting because it's 7 pieces, so it's slightly less complex, but it's not just about, thinking inside the box. It's like there's a whole million different types of puzzles you can create. There's like you can really go beyond, and half of the fun I think is like, yes, you can solve a puzzle, but you can also create a puzzle. So it's not just about like, hey, we're trying to figure it out, but it's this creative aspect of like, this is creating new ways for people to challenge each other and kind of collaborate. This was a really interesting kind of global craze in the 18th century. Still in ancient China, this is a mechanical puzzle. This is called the 9 linked rings. It also comes in other numbers of varieties, but the 9 linked rings seem to be the most kind of common talked about. You can see both sides are looking at different ones. And essentially there's 2 metal bars that are interlocked with metal rings with little different metal parts. And you're supposed to, through essentially taking it off and putting it back on and moving it in different ways. And I'm horrible at this, so I'm explaining it weirdly, because this is not my flavor of puzzle. You'll see. But essentially, you're trying to take the rings off. And I think it takes something like 341 sequences of events to actually take it apart. It's so hard that people used to use it to lock chests of valuables. It's like we'd rather like have you sit there for 10 hours trying to figure out how to unlock it than like put a simple lock on it. But I think it's just like this sense of like this slow, methodical, like there's a mathematical kind of algorithmic almost system of trying to figure that out. Obviously, this is very pre-AI and computers, but it's this same sense of like, how do I figure out the system that's underlying this puzzle? Is there some sort of logic happening underneath it that I don't know? And how can I unlock that? Not just literally, but can I figure out the patterns? I'm sure we do a lot of that. Fan favorite. And it's funny when I think about Jigsaw, like I've gone through phases of my life where I've been like, Jigsaw is the most boring thing ever. Like, why would you want to sit around and like put the little pieces together and then take it all apart? Like, go do something valuable with your life. And then like the pandemic hits, or like you're like, I need a break from my children. Please, somebody like lock me in a room with a jigsaw puzzle. I would be so happy now. So like I think there's a different like thing that you get out of puzzles depending on like where you are in terms of like what you need. Puzzles, interestingly enough, originated in kind of the 1700s. They were really like Victorian leisure era activity. And the original jigsaw puzzles were made out of like 1/4-inch wood, and they were quite literally sawn by a jigsaw. So they would hand cut, or like with a metal kind of mechanical saw, they would cut the shapes, often freehand or drawn, and kind of ad lib as they go. And one of the interesting things that I learned when I was researching this is that a lot of those original puzzle makers would have their own kind of unique signature piece, and they called it a whimsy piece. And so for this puzzle maker, this is called Chagrin Falls Puzzles. Falls, they would have it looked like a woman kind of falling backwards, and she was in every single puzzle. And then another puzzle maker would have like eagles, and everybody would have their own kind of personal touch. And the interesting thing about jigsaw puzzles is they've had resurgences at interesting times in the world. So the Great Depression is actually the second kind of big moment for jigsaw puzzles. Everybody was out of work. Another time when people were maybe not necessarily out of work, but at home more, was the pandemic. Jigsaw's had a really big resurgence there. I actually had a friend who created a collaborative jigsaw puzzle maker in Figma. So you could kind of take a picture and put it and make a puzzle out of it and then invite your friends to Figma and put it back together. I'm a little more analog, so I didn't actually get into that. But everybody has their own kind of flavor of what they like to do with jigsaws. But yeah, I think there's a sense of like, with jigsaws, the goal isn't to, like, unless you're my mom, you're probably not gluing the puzzle together and putting it on the wall. You're probably taking it apart at the end. And so, like, what is the point of that? Like, what am I getting out of that? I'm getting some sort of, like, relaxation. I'm, like, there's a phrase like, idle hands do devil's work. I love that. It's a little dramatic, but the sense of like, if I have my hands busy, it actually frees my mind to like think about other things if I'm doing it alone. But often people will do jigsaw puzzles together as a way to just like, oh, I'm on vacation, I'm gonna do this with my family, or it's like, it's a holiday thing and we're gonna get around the table and we're gonna do this, or we're gonna have it in the corner, it'll be an activity that people can do, and it allows people to kind of connect and keep their hands busy, and they start to have these conversations. Like a lot of people who have board game nights, like, yeah, they like the games, but they actually are using this as kind of an excuse to just get together with these people and have a really like kind of routine around it. Dramatically different direction. So this is, if you're familiar with the movie Imitation Game, this is the Enigma machine. And so this is kind of like a mechanical representation of cryptography, which is a really cool kind of puzzle theme. And cryptography actually goes back, I'm going out of order timeline-wise, but cryptography goes back to even like Julius Caesar. So one of the earliest cryptography like strategies is called the Caesar shift. And so you shift, A becomes D, or B becomes E. And so you can write a message, and then if you know like how many should I shift it by, or it might get more complicated than that. Obviously with this Enigma machine, it's essentially like a shift, but times 10 in terms of complexity, and it also changed every day. Like you can essentially unplug those things and plug them back in, and it becomes like a new puzzle to solve. So in World War II, Alan Turing and friends essentially figured out a systematic way to decode these messages, and some would say kind of win the war. We're probably not winning wars in our research or ops, but I do think there's something interesting about this kind of, again, this like systemic way of encoding or decoding things. What about the things that people say and like, your stakeholder said they want this, but they really mean this. Like, there's a lot of things that we do in terms of like interpreting that I think maybe there's ways to scale that. I don't know the answer yet. Tell me when you figure it out. Totally different. Again, I'm just going all over the place because this is my literal ADHD brain. But I think about mystery novels as a nice kind of like narrative version of a puzzle. If you're like me, you're probably not actually trying to solve the puzzle along the way. You're just kind of like chillaxing and enjoying the ride. But a lot of people do see this as a way to expose themselves to problems and dangerous situations and kind of immerse themselves in somebody else's problem as a way to either escape or challenge themselves. And it's really interesting to think about like the why. Again, it's like, it's relaxation, but it's also an interesting challenge. I don't necessarily read with other people, but it's interesting to think about like, I've connected with many people about like, oh, you like this mystery novel person? If you like Tana French, let me know. There's really cool stuff there. But I'm just trying to be friends with the LinkedIn folks, so I have some LinkedIn games references here. I won't mention any specific games. Honestly, like there's a proliferation of like every new, like I think there's a new one today, a new LinkedIn today. Let me know how it goes. But I think that the real interesting part about the games today is really how technology is kind of scaffolding and enhancing the experiences that we have with games. I was joking with Shane over there. I sent him a message in January because I saw him on one of the LinkedIn leaderboards and we were tied for first place, and I was like, yes, ResearchOps sharing the lead. I didn't put him in here yet because I didn't have his permission. But it's like, you have the leaderboards, you have stats. The thing that I actually really liked about the new technology is like the Wordle bot, like recap at the end. It's like, well, you did this, but like maybe you should have thought about doing this. And it really actually reminds me of your like you basically built the Wordle bot for 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 non-researchers. Yeah, it's kind of like, okay, here's what you did, and here's like a slightly better strategy, and it's coming from AI. So you're like, yeah, nobody's really critiquing me. It's like, yeah, you should look at that. But I think like it's funny, the thing I said about like cheating is like, I think nobody likes to cheat. And then Kate was like, I think that there are some people that like to cheat at games. I was like, who are they? And like, what are they trying to like? It's again like it's like trying to pay somebody to do your jigsaw puzzle for you, or like pay someone to go on the vacation for you. It's like, well, what are you getting out of that? I guess like. Ooh, oh, Team Human over here. I'm on Team Bird. I'm just saying, like, I'm opting out of everything. Yeah, yeah. I mean, kind of doubling down on the human aspect. Actually, like, I have some paper here too. It's like just because we live in modern day, like, doesn't mean everything has to be in the digital experiences. Like, the favorite thing I do every year, maybe not favorite thing I do every day. Don't tell my wife that, or my children, or my dogs, or everyone I love, is this annual Puzzle Mania for New York Times, and it's this like big insert, and sometimes it has like wild themes, and it's all interrelated, or sometimes it's just like we have this like 2-page mega crossword, and you can never finish it alone, but you can do it with your family, and you can lay it out on the table, like, you know, hopefully they don't watch this. Like, one of the things I like to do when I'm at my in-laws' house is like have a crossword puzzle, because it's like a little awkward sometimes. So like my way of having conversation is saying like, okay, what's the answer to this? And like that's our way of like being able to kind of bridge the divide. So again, the why, the question, like, why do we do puzzles? Why do we read mystery novels? Why do we work in ResearchOps? Like, why are we these curious people that want to like get to the solution? Are we trying to escape something? Are we trying to have fun? Are we trying to like train ourselves and get better, or just get that solution and have that like, one of the things that I love, the reason that I don't cheat is like, I want that satisfaction of having had that aha moment. Like, that's just such gold of like, oh, I figured it out. Like now I like even in the times where it's like there's not a clear solution, it's like, oh, I figured out something new, and this is really interesting, and like people like appreciated it, or like I'm proud in some way of like what I've learned or been able to uncover. I think like at its simplest, puzzles are this like representation of like an intellectual playground, and I think that's where I want to like make the big intersection with ResearchOps is really like, yes, we're building, but we're also playing. And I think at the end of the day, I was like, okay, what is the literal puzzle of ResearchOps? And I was like, a part of me wants to just like throw that metaphor away because it's oversimplified. And in reality, like, unless you're doing research as a hobby, like, it is way more complicated than a crossword puzzle or a jigsaw puzzle, or even like the mechanical 9-link rings. As soon as like I said, like as soon as you figure out like the answer, like everything changes. Like gravity is now upside down, and so like, okay, what puzzle is that? Like, if you have the answer to that, let me know. But essentially, what I ended up at is, let's just like flip the metaphor and say like, this is actually like not a static thing. This is a creative collaboration of like, we're actually making a collage almost. This is a really beautiful collage from Hannah Hawk. And in some ways I was like, oh, this kind of looks like a crossword puzzle or some sort of logic puzzle, but like, it's so like organic and messy, and there's layers and things are like glued into places. And it like, one of the really interesting things about collage is that it's like a lot of things that are found from elsewhere. I'm sure that resonates with how we piece together our world of our research ecosystems, that it's kind of messy. Actually, one of the funny things I learned about Kate is she was a fine art or painting major. And another person I really respect in the ResearchOps world is also a painting major. I'm like, wow, there's an interesting parallel here. Like, there's this sense of like fine art and creativity, and like this balancing that like strategic thinking with creative freedom and ability to like, okay, yeah, I know the rules of classic drawing, and now I can break the rules in a million different ways. So bringing it all a little bit together, even though I never put anything really together. I like to take them apart. I think like if I tried to put it into like words of advice for you, I'd say approach research and research ops again like an intellectual playground. Just play and play together. So that's all I have.